many of you guys are using this gun? So there's a couple of different models. First one, we'll start with this one. There's a 40, a 60, and an 85. This one's an 85. It's an air spray. We also make the AA gun, air assisted airless, which is only in the 60 and 85. This particular one is a standard model. Just got the plate in the back. There is a model out there that's got a display. You guys have that smart module. A couple, yep. Smart module, obviously I don't have one today, but basically instead of just a light, it's got some gauges on there so you can actually see the actual voltage and amperage output. There's a couple of screws on the back and you can unplug it and replace it if something goes wrong. It's pretty simple, so, but I don't have one here today. I'm going to tear this down and talking about some of the tests that you can do with this gun. We do make a probe and you can probe the output of this to make sure you're getting the right kV output. It's quite expensive. But the way to go about checking it to make sure it should put out the right output is you just take a micrometer and you can test from the gun out to the electric. And depending on which model, and if you look in the manual, it'll tell you there's a resistance value through this gun. And as long as the resistance is within that window, it will put out the right kV as long as you've got the right air to this gun. Okay? Depending on if it's a 40, 60, or 85 is what the reading's going to be. The air to the gun does require about 65 psi of air to get that turbine to spin at the right speed to make sure you get the right kV. That light on the back is going to be your visual to if it's spinning fast enough. There's three colors. There's an amber, a green, and a red. The amber and the red are kind of hard to differentiate, but if you kind of play around with the input of the air pressure and make it go up and down, you'll get a good feel for the two different colors. The amber just means you're turning too slow and it's not producing the right rotational speed to get the right kV. Okay, so you increase the pressure till you see it go green, and then you know you're getting the right output. If it's red, that means you're overturning the turbine. It doesn't mean that you're sending too much kV on the front of the gun. It clips it so you can't put too much out. It's what makes the gun safe. But what it means is you're spinning it so fast, you're just going to burn it out, that little turbine out a little bit quicker than normal. Okay? All right. On the side of the gun, you've got a couple of knobs. One is a fan adjust, one is an atomization adjust. Usually, if you're putting 60 to 65 psi of air to this gun, just to get the turbine to run properly, that's way too much air at the cap. So the atomization knob on this side is there simply to restrict air to the cap so you don't get over-atomize. Okay? So a lot of times when you're setting guns up, you're adjusting an air regulator to control the atomization. On this one, you're using this knob. If this knob is wide open, you're pumping 60 to 65 psi of air to the cap, you're probably over-atomizing it, and you may be even decreasing your paint transfer efficiency if you're doing that. Okay? All right, so I'm going to start tearing this apart. If somebody has a question, just throw your hand up or speak out and deal with the question. I'm going to start by removing the air cap. The air cap does have a seal. Should be a couple of seals, one at the ring here, and it looks like this one's missing one. One at the cap to the retaining one. Okay? You can soak this in solvent. I don't recommend soaking anything on here overnight, but you can put it in some solvent to get it all. What you don't ever want to do is shoot solvent down into the front of the gun if you're cleaning it. Always wipe it, but never soak it. Does that make sense? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get solvent dripped down into this nozzle to get back into the electronics. If you are cleaning this gun with a rag with solvent, make sure it's tipped down like this. That way, any solvent that runs on the gun will drip off and down and not up into the gun. Okay? All right. I'm going to start by removing the nozzle. Like any gun or any valve that you ever take apart, you want to trigger it and get that needle off the seat. It helps keep the longevity of the needle seat intact. If I leave this forward and I start unspinning this, I'm sorry, trouble. You're basically running the needle into the seat and you're damaging or wearing it faster than normal. Okay, so put that trigger back, then go ahead and remove the nozzle. All right, the nozzle starts with resistance traveling through this. I'm going to go through the whole path of electronics here, but there's two rings on the back side of this. This is the seal, and one is basically metallic ring to transfer kV. If you take your screwdriver, and I'll pass this around, and you just run it through here ever so lightly, you'll start to feel kind of a little bit of a rough edge on the inside. It's basically taking the kV from this ring and transferring it to the inside where the electrode can pass it. Okay. The electrode should just spin free. Sometimes, however, it spins the whole thing in the inside. So if you put a little side pressure on your trigger here, you should be able to spin the electrode. Okay. It also has a resistance value, and that resistance is from one of these legs, doesn't matter which one, out to the tip. And I forget what the resistance reading in there, again, it's in the manual. But you can take your megameter and you can measure that through this as well. Again, it's within the window, it's good. If it's outside, you can replace this. Same with this. In the window of resistance, it's good. If not, you replace it. Okay? If you do this lightly with this probe, you can feel that rough edge in there. So I'm just going to pass these two things around so that everybody just gets it. Yeah. At this point now, you can take the trigger assembly off. All right, once the trigger assembly is off, then I can take this tool again, and I can get down into the needle assembly. And then we can pull the whole needle assembly out. All right, the needle assembly, basically the packings are in this casing right here. You can loosen that and pull this off and replace this. Or you can replace the whole thing and buy this as a package. I like to replace it as a package for one reason. If this gets worn right on here and you put a new packing seal on here, it's still not going to seal properly if this is worn. So these are two wear items. I feel like you should replace them together. Like if you can get it as a package assembly, just like this. If you just replace this right here, when you get this, you're going to get a little packet of dielectric grease and you're going to fill this whole cavity with that grease. Reinstall it onto the packing and then tighten this down. If you look in the manual, there's going to say there's a drag spec on that. Right? If you want to call it that, they don't really call it. It's call it a drag spec. And for you, it's like 6 months, I think. People have drag wrenches, so what I say is take it by hand, and then with a couple of wrenches, give it another quarter turn, just to make sure it's still slides nice. By the way, this nut on the back right here, that's a lead lag adjustment. You shouldn't ever have to adjust that. But if you pull the trigger on your gun and you get fluid out of the gun and then air, so you get spitting, you may have to adjust this little nut. Because what you want is when you pull that trigger, the air valve should open and then the fluid valve should open. So when you de-trigger it, the fluid valve shuts and the air shuts. So if you get it out of adjustment and you get spitting out of your gun, you may need to just adjust this nut. All right, I'm going to disconnect the fluid line from the heel of the gun. By the way, this is all plastic or carbon fittings, so there are torque specs on a lot of these. but I like to just say, snug it another quarter or a half of a turn. You don't have to crank tight on these fittings. If you do, if you start really cranking tight, like this fitting right here, this plastic nut is going to strip out on this metal fitting, and then it won't secure anymore. So just snug things down with this, and it doesn't have to be Armstrong. All right, I'm going to take the front of the gun off. There's 2 screws, one on each side, securing the barrel of the gun to the base of the gun. Thread it so you don't need to remove the whole screw from the base of the gun. You're just unthreading it from the barrel. Then I'm just going to pull it forward. Okay, a couple of things about this. These little fittings in here. These are the areas where you over tighten it. You can pull some plastic housing. So again, you don't have to crank Armstrong down tight on these. It's snug in another quarter turn. So, if you look down inside here, it's hard to see, but there's right in the center, there's a little metal stud, and that goes out to the top of this. You'll see the stud on this side. That's the little stud that nozzle's coming in contact with when you put that nozzle in. So pass that around. Also take notice of this spring right here. That's your ground spring. You have to make sure that that's intact when you put this back together. All right, from here I'm going to go ahead and remove fire and the turbine. Okay. These 2 pieces are separate. The turbine doesn't snap in place, it slides, and it just slides in one direction. So I'm just going to move it up, and I can disconnect it. This guy right here, depending on the model of the gun, is also going to have a resistant value. So you're going to test from one of these tabs, either side, to the spring of the front of this. And again, you should get a resistant value through there. If it's within the window, you're good. If it's outside, you need to replace it. This is polarity sensitive, so you have to make sure you have your negative and positive leads correctly on this. The turbine, a couple of things, you can rebuild this. Most people, frankly, are older to replace it, but they can be rebuilt. The other thing you can do is on the tabs here, on the 2 outside turbines, you take a regular meter, that should give you a resistant reading between 2 and 6 ohms. So you can test the windings in here as well. Okay. All right, on the base of the gun, I'm going to go ahead and take the on-off valve out. And we have an on-off on here, so you can turn the electrostatics off if you're trying to paint into a corner to avoid the Faraday cage. If you've got the smart module on the back of this gun, you can go in and set high-low settings, so you can actually select just the lower gauge valve so you still get the voltage, but it's minimized so you can get into those corners. And just go ahead and pull that out the back. The spring came out. The spring is for the air valve return. There's obviously a couple of springs on this valve that can be replaced, and this is your air valve. I'm just going to push it right out the back. This is the air valve in its entirety. The seal or the sealing edge is right here, but you replace the whole thing. You just replace it. The next thing is the U-cup that seals the air valve. Just take the air valve and put it in there and just kind of put it in. The U-cup. So U-cup is shaped, it's called a U-cup because it's shaped like a U. If you look at it closely, you can kind of see it. So to reinstall that, you want to make sure that those U's are inserted to the gun. So whenever you have a U-cup or a V-stack, that's good pressure or air pressure, you always want the seals to go towards the pressure you're sealing again. Okay? And that's just going to push right inside. And that way when this needle comes through, all right, for the fan and the atomization, there's not a lot there. There's just a couple of rings. Let's get those off. on there, then you can disconnect the two pieces. There's a ring in it. Station. It's a little different. This is the atomization scale. And to pick this back in, you just want to make sure that that paddle line doesn't go into. Then you want to look down inside here, just make sure everything is clean, especially if you got paint back in here for some reason. Make sure it's all clean. All right, that's pretty much the gun taken apart. Just going to make sure the question. All right, start rebuilding this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall the ribbon cable. You put this on, again, it doesn't snap on, it slides in from that top. You just engage in that slot, and just slide it down. Then we're going to go ahead and insert it back into the gun. If you get this put in upside down, it will move back together. So if you put it back together wrong, if you put this in upside down, it's not going to allow the barrel to move back up. Okay. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my air valve back in. You can take a little bit of lubricant and lube this up. And then I always like to put a little lubricant on the spring. It's a mechanical device. It does help. And then again, O-rings, don't lubricate those. Slide that back in. Get that in, again, snug it down, quarter turn, tight. Make sure this is operating properly and you can get it on the wrong side. Okay. Move that around, make sure that's returning, and then we're going to go ahead and put this seal back in. If you have an older gun, this might be a white seal. We came out with this seal a couple years ago. This is a much more durable seal. That we intended to tear quite easily. In a bad seal in here, you can air pressure and you're going to lose capacity of this gun. Go ahead and put the barrel on. Oh, that's the barrel on. All right, so again, make sure that that ground spring is in place. Make sure this spring is in place. This is an important area for the dielectric grease. When you're going to rebuild, you need to grease. When you buy one of these, if you get it from the factory, there's going to be grease all over this thing. I think the factory tends to over-grease it. It doesn't hurt it to do that, but really this is the important area. In fact, if you read the manual, it'll tell you just put it all the time. You can grease the whole thing, you don't have to. Just make sure you've got grease around it. And make sure that the spring is intact, and make sure it's clean down the side. Okay. Back in place. Snug these down, these two screws. You want to kind of do these evenly. In other words, don't completely tighten one and then do the other. Kind of keep working back and forth to keep this barrel down into place. And then once it's tight, again, just like everything else on this gun, give it another quarter turn or so just to snug it down. You don't want to pull those inserts out. You don't want to angle or tighten. All right, next Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install the needle assembly. And once you feel it snug down, give it another 1/8 to a 1/4 turn, and you're good. All right, here we want to put the needle or the trigger back on because the next thing we're going to do is put that nozzle back in. We want to be able to pull that needle back when we do it. So that little fork has to be set in front of that adjustment screw that we talked about. So you just kind of place that in front, and then we'll go ahead and put our screws back in. How many of you have been out to the Graco booth out here in areas? Have you seen the still air gun at the still air Ace yet? So it's a composite gun, it's an air spray gun. So go there and check it out. We're done here. It's a much lighter gun if you're using regular air spray guns. And the first thing people should last the gun, right? It's a composite gun. It's made out of the same material that we've been making this gun. And this is a super durable gun. So that Ace gun is durable, just as durable. Plastic, and it's a composite. It's very rugged. But if you haven't seen that, you should go check it out this morning. All right, we put the electrode on. Again, making sure that everything is clean so it can pass. All right, put some string thread seal on here because there's no way to really tighten this. You don't want it to come apart. So that pink or low grade thread seal. Again, you can put some side pressure on your trigger and just hand tighten this down. Once you feel it tight, then you're just gonna let that cure. And then we can go ahead and put our nozzle assembly on, pull that needle back. Snug it down. Once you feel it snug, another 1/4 to a 1/4 turn, you should be good. When you put the air cap back on, you wanna kind of pause and just make sure that it actually comes up through the center. Here, actually larger, so you can force that electrode through one of those atomizing air holes. If you don't catch that and you do this and you put the retaining ring in, we call this a snapback electrode, that energy will bend that electrode. So one of the things you want to make sure is this electrode is always straight, and then when you put the cap on, it's coming out through the center. This will work if it's bent. However, if it's up in there bent, that fluid stream is going to come out and hit that electrode kind of funny, and it's going to cause that stream of paint to kind of move off in weird directions outside of both the atomization area and the transfer of KB area. Okay, so make sure that this guy is straight. I have seen people also go in there and they say, "Oh, it's just that weird at the tip." They come in with the side cutters and clip that. You can buy with that for a while, but I've seen them so far that they're clipped all the way back to the nozzle. That's not good. That's defeating your transfer of KB to the paint. Okay. So as a temporary solution, you can probably clip the end of that off, but you want to replace that. Snug this down. Again, just snug that down. I see a lot of people, they go in there and they really tighten that hard. They'll damage the seals, and then they'll get early, and they'll actually get paint going backwards, or they'll get really bad buildup on the air cap, and it's all because they over-tightened that. Snug it. Everything about this gun, if you remember one thing when you leave here today, snug things down, don't over-tighten it. The only other thing I haven't talked about on this gun, and I removed it, is this right in here. There is a seal up in there. If you take this apart, rebuild it, again, another area for dielectric grease. Okay, and that's the gun. Questions or comments? All right, we on this gun. So in the future, if you want to review this, did you record this as well?
Yes.
So Spray will have the recording of it. We've got service videos on Graco.com. They're on YouTube. If any of you guys are on a Graco University, there's a whole course on this gun. How many of you are aware of the Graco University? Okay. If not, and you're interested in it, you can get the link from Spray and you can register and do the training. Not only on this.
What guy here with?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the air hose is a left-handed thread, so people don't use the wrong air hose. There is a resistive value to that air hose for grounding. So you want to make sure your hand is in contact with the barrel or the handle of this gun, because your safety and your ground is coming from that. Something free to wear wrist straps and equipment, that's fine too. If you want to wear it. Yep.
Graco does make that for that gun specifically. They do have an E-stand, which.
Yep. One of your first indicators that you're getting a bad ground or a worse ground, if you want to call it that, is when the operator starts feeling static. Yeah. When you start feeling that static shock, it's usually a good indicator that ground from here to the true earth ground is failing. Okay. The other time where you start getting shocks is when your part you're painting isn't grounded well, or you're too far away from the part. Because if you're too far away from the part, the operator now becomes the best ground, and things start going back to the operator. So if you get a lot of rat back, if you're starting to feel a little bit of shocking, it's always ground. Just check your ground and your distance from gun part.
I have found down one on the stand gesture. You will be shocked.
Yeah. Good question.
Now, it may, some people put that brace on the console back
But on the nozzle, you mean on the
Like the
outside?
threads, the outside.
Yeah, I know you're fine doing that, yeah. What you want to do is you want to make sure you don't get it on the inside.
Right.
Yep.
rounded glove.
I like the gun covers. The guys, this was many years ago. I didn't want to buy the gun covers, so some people will tape them. They'll just make even tape around it, which is fine. I had one guy send me a picture, said he was getting shocks and he didn't know why, and he had tape with aluminum. It's not bad.
Yeah, still have that picture.
Was that you guys that sent this?
That was one of the names of colors.
Paper, if it was just